Facebook. So
okay, it's fine.
I'm gonna go ahead and try to get it to the page so that we can. It should be streaming live from my page, Raquel, if you want to go ahead and start sharing it to your platform. Okay. Yes.
Technological.
Got to make it work.
That technology, I'm telling you.
Got to make it work, I'm telling you.
I just think back to Dr. Jeter when we ain't even had no cell phone. Traveling miles and miles till we
cell
get
phones,
to
computers, no Wi-Fi, none of
oh my gosh. I'm like, how in the world
how did we survive?
I don't know. We can't go around the corner now without this phone.
Right.
Like what?
Turn right back around.
And travel clear across the country without talking to somebody.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost unfathomable now. It's like, really?
You don't? Yeah. Like what? Remember the word processor?
What did we do if we had a flat tire on the side and had no cell phone?
You had a pay phone.
you had to, yes, you had a pay phone, but you had to trace.
Get out, find one.
Right.
Talk to one. Yeah.
And hope there was one within walking distance.
I know, right? I remember our grandfather used to have a map, and he used to try to teach us how to read it. I'm like, look, that's just too much work. Thank God for GPS.
Right.
If some of us had to rely on a map now, we wouldn't make it.
Wouldn't make it.
We would never
stuck in the driveway.
That's it.
I'm trying to do a host party. How do I host a party?
Ooh, glad I don't have to figure that stuff out.
Darian.
Yeah.
I'm trying to host a watch party.
It should give you some kind of option to do it.
Hold on. Okay, I got it.
All right, let me know when you've done that, because we're gonna go ahead and get started.
I'm ready. I don't know if it's. Hold on.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and we're
there
already,
it is. There it is.
All right, so we're live across other platforms. We'll go ahead and start recording Zoom, and then we'll get started. All right, well, good evening. Thank each of you for joining us tonight for part 2 of our conversation, Black Mental Health Matters. Black Mental Health Matters. And we certainly, again, appreciate each of you for logging in tonight via Zoom, via Facebook, via Periscope and Twitter, via YouTube, whichever social media platform you've chosen to view us tonight. We certainly appreciate your presence here with us. And again, this conversation started a couple of weeks ago, and we just wanted to have a dialogue, an honest conversation about mental health in the Black community. This is a conversation that is hosted and facilitated by the Pearline Hill Foundation. Once again, I am Darian Hill. I am co-founder and the Chief Operations Officer for the Pearline Hill Foundation for Educational and Societal Empowerment. You can find us on all social media platforms at the Pearline Hill Foundation, Facebook, Instagram, as well as Twitter. And joining us tonight also is our co-founder and Chief Executive Officer, Raquel Brown, who is with us tonight, along with our 2 mental health professionals who are joining us again for part 2 of this conversation. And again, we want to thank and welcome Dr. Jennifer Jeter.
Evening.
As well as Mrs. Deshel Valley.
Hello.
And just to kind of recap who they are, Dr. Jennifer Jeter is a supervising psychologist for Shelby County Schools. and she also has a private practice, Imani Psychological Services. Mrs. Valley is a regional supervisor for North Mississippi Youth Villages. She's also a therapist with Lakeside Behavioral Health Services. And she also works in a like capacity with her church. And so again, we want to welcome them tonight. We want to thank them again for rejoining us for part 2 of this conversation. So as we've been communicating, one of the things we wanted to do tonight, and we did not really have an opportunity to touch on it in great detail during the last conversation, was mental health in children, or mental health in adolescents. And we know adolescence is between the age of 10 and 19 is what the experts say. But then others have said, well, whenever the child has reached puberty, right, is when they start to move into adolescence. But however, we wanted to have a conversation tonight geared toward mental health in children. And we also wanted to touch on mental trauma and how trauma plays a huge part into our mental health, right? You know, some people have experienced, you know, very traumatic accidents. Some people have experienced rape, right? Some have experienced murder, right? They've watched it, they've witnessed it happen. And the trauma from those particular events have now weighed heavily on their mental state, right? Their mental capacities. And so we want to deal with mental trauma tonight, as well as mental health in children. So before we dive deep into our conversation tonight, we're going to give space to our CEO, Raquel, to have a few words before we go into some statistics, and then allow our professionals to take the floor.
I won't take up too much time. I'm just excited to be here, excited for everyone to join in for part 2 of this conversation. We had such a good conversation part 1, that, you know, the audience was raving for part 2. So here we are, and I'm excited to hear what our professionals have to say. And so I'll turn it back over to them. I'm just glad to be here. Thank you to everyone who's joining in. And let's get started.
Awesome, thank you. And so and what I like about tonight's conversation is we do have 2 professionals, again, who joined us for part 1, but it's just, it's no coincidence that they're here tonight for part 2, because both work with children. And again, Dr. Jeter works as a supervising psychologist in the Shelby County school system. And then Mrs. Valley works with youth villages. And so both work with not just families, but they work directly with children as well. And so we just, again, want to have a conversation around mental health and children. I know sometimes, especially in our community, you know, there's this saying, or this old adage that children are to be seen and not heard, right? As if they have no feelings, as if there's nothing that weighs heavily on their shoulders. And so we want to talk about that tonight because, you know, as I was sharing with someone before, it was on a post maybe a few days ago, and we were talking about children and their feelings. And I said, well, you know, they're little humans as well, right? And they have real feelings. They have real issues.
Yes.
Sometimes they're pushed aside. They're not dealt with, but that only leads to them being potentially embittered adults, right? It leads to them being adults with major issues that were left unresolved. And so we want to make sure our goal here at the Pearline Hill Foundation is that we provide as many resources as we can to help bridge gaps, to help ensure families that there is information available to them, right? There are resources available to them so that if their children are in various states, if they sense something in their children, if they notice a change in their behavior, a change in their mood, that they have resources at their disposal to get their children help. And that's something that we've got to be invested in here in the Black community. We've got to ensure that we know what resources are available to us so that we can get our children the necessary help that they need, right? Early on. And even before adolescence, right? You know, not just starting at age 10,
Right.
but even before adolescence, right? You know, if you recognize something in your child at age 5, you know, we need to make sure that we understand what those next steps are.
Yes.
And so before I go into any statistics, I do want to open the floor to Dr. Jeter and Mrs. Valley to maybe share with us some of their experiences working with children, maybe some things that they've seen, maybe some case studies, right, that you've worked on that you can share with us as it relates to your involvement with mental health in children. So we'll start with Mrs. Valley tonight. Just kind of walk us briefly through your experience with working with children and adolescents.
Thank you so much. One of the things that we see, we work again with those children who have a mental health diagnosis as well as severe behavior problems. So with our organization and the program that we're in, we service them in home. Our services are comparable to a residential setting. However, our goal is to keep them in home in their natural setting and to provide structure, intervention, resources, everything that they would need to be successful in their own family, in their own community. And a lot of the things that we see is based on trauma. Some of our youth have been, sexually molested. Some have been that are in state custody, that are in foster homes. And of course, we have those who've been reunified with their homes, with their biological parents, rather, in their own home. And so you have just a variety of issues that are surrounding that. But when it comes to recognizing that in our community and dealing with that, there is still a sense and a stigma of there's nothing really wrong with them. I can choose to discipline them and they should get better. And that leads from a lot of ignorance of what mental illness is. It comes from that culture of this is what my parents did. And so none of us had a mental illness, even though that parent may recognize that they're borderline with that illness. They will not acknowledge it. And so some of the things that we may have, and we talked about it a little bit the last time, with those children that are receiving the interventions, receiving the therapy, they're bought in, they're aligned with the services. A lot of times we have months before we get the parents bought into acknowledging, accepting, and then beginning the work. So a lot of it in our children is that depression. We see a lot of the anxiety. We see a lot of conduct disorders, intermittent explosive disorders, a lot of anger, a lot of aggression, a lot of sadness, those things. And we still have parents that feel like I can buy them their favorite toy and it'll be okay. There is a lot of work to be done when it comes to that. And so we're providing this psychoeducation to them. We're trying to go against that conventional wisdom, that says, nope, nobody in my family was like that. Nope, nobody was like that. So we're not going to have that. And that's a lot of time what we see we're doing in-home therapy.
Okay, thank you so much. Dr. Jeter?
I started out my career working in community mental health in the Children and Youth Department with Midtown Mental Health Center. And that was probably a lot of the entry point for a lot of young people with getting services. And a lot of times youth villages sometimes would be a part of that. We collaborate, and even the school system, we collaborate with youth villages. But I would see ADHD, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, probably the budding bipolar disorder, a lot of conduct disorder and opposition defiant disorders, and even some psychotic disorders. For whatever reason, I got a lot of, I had most of the psychotic disorders on my caseload, but that was actually an interest of mine, because I really went into psychology to work with children. And as I did my training and internship, they encouraged me to train, get more training in adults as well, and I did, and that was beneficial. But that is what I enjoy working with, is children and youth.
Yes.
So though psychotic disorders are very rare in children, but they do happen, and so we have to be aware of that. But also some of the other things, like if you have a child or an adult, for that matter, with severe depression, you may see psychosis. So and that's and every once in a while I may see some autism, but everything that Mrs. Valley has mentioned in terms of our interaction and parents' interaction with children is spot on. We do, and sometimes working with the school system, what you may find is parents will be in denial. They'll say, no, we haven't seen this, they don't do this at home, it just happens at school, until they start getting suspended or expelled, and then you'll hear when they come to meetings, well, they can't go to my grandmother's house either, or they can't go to my aunt's house because of their behavior. So it's there are things that are seen, but not acknowledged, because they don't, again, the stigma of it. But also you may find out as you're talking to parents, as you're sitting there developing a treatment plan. Yes, my aunt, she was depressed, but they may never have gotten treatment. Or my aunt did such and such, or they said my cousin was, but the things are not acknowledged, and the treatment is not always there. So getting families to acknowledge, and getting families to grab hold of the treatment that is out there, to meet the needs of the children, but also for the families to say, this is how we respond to it. But also to recognize in themselves, every once in a while that I do that too. And then it becomes, as she was saying, it becomes a family issue to go and work with all of those the symptoms, because mental illness affects everybody. It affects everybody. So we have to bring everybody to the table.
Absolutely. I was just sitting here thinking about those formative years in the life of a child, and how important those years are, and how important it is for parents and other responsible adults, guardians, to really be actively involved in the mental welfare of their children, right? Because those years are very important. I was looking at some stats here. I just wanted to throw a couple out here as it relates to mental disorders in children. And I think some of you already touched on this. It says ADHD, behavior problems, anxiety, and depression are the most commonly diagnosed mental disorders in children. About 9.4% of children aged 2 to 17, which is approximately 6.1 million children, have received some sort of an ADHD diagnosis. And 7.4% of children aged 3 to 17 have a diagnosed behavior problem. So again, when we think about those formative years, one of the questions that comes to mind is, how can we help, and this is a question to you both, how can we help our children cope with the normal stresses of life, right? When we think about just the normal stresses of life, right? Not anything abnormal, right? Or outside of the realm of possibility, but how do we help our children just learn those key coping mechanisms, if you will? to handle the normal stresses of life? And we'll start with you, Dr. Jeter.
I would say first and foremost, be willing to listen. Working with children and with adolescents and having, yes, I'm a supervising psychologist now, but I was actually doing therapy with students in elementary school through high school. And one of the big things that they would say is nobody listens, whether that's the parents, teachers, administrators. They don't listen. So they would hold stuff in because nobody would listen to what they had to say. So leaving that door open for them to have a true conversation with you, sit down and be able to share what they're feeling, and truly listen to that and acknowledge it, not just try to push it aside, but acknowledge that they can be experiencing things that you might not understand or think that they could, but there's so much going on that they see and they're feeling it. There's so much trauma that's in our neighborhoods, in our country, as we're all experiencing right now. But if we're experiencing things and we're watching the news and we're just walking out the door and what do you think a child is feeling when they are seeing this or when they're experiencing it? But then you were mentioning ADHD and anxiety, but sometimes going hand in hand with those is the trauma that watching this or experiencing this has on them. So the behavior acting out that you're seeing it can be a product of that trauma. The anxiety can be a product of the trauma that a lot of our children are experiencing. And as I mentioned last week, some of the ADHD diagnosis could really and truly be anxiety because they mimic each other. The symptoms sometimes mimic each other. But if we could get adults to really and truly listen to children and believe them, that would help them a lot, to give them a place for them to feel safe to share what they're experiencing. And then to be able to say, okay, I'm not equipped to help you with that. And then say, okay, but we're going to find somebody who is. And whether it's, every school district doesn't have a licensed mental health center like Shelby County does, but they can connect you with somebody. As we mentioned last time, your primary care physician could be a way to hook you up with a therapist. But being able to and not being afraid to ask for that help so that those children have a place to discuss those feelings and those fears.
That's good. That's good. Mrs. Valley.
And so just even piggybacking off of that, in addition to, one of the first thing is acceptance, that these are children and that they have those feelings, they have those emotions. And how do you think that they are going to problem solve when they've never been taught that? Normalizing it for them. Like you, Dr. Jeter just talked about, we're in the midst of a pandemic. Are we just telling them you need to put a mask on? Or are we explaining why? In years to come, we will know what that trauma is like for them, because right now we're in the midst of it and everybody is trying to focus on the task at hand of being safe. And so we're setting the stage right now for this to be played out in a couple of years. But the biggest thing, and I have to just say, is acceptance of the fact that you are a parent, and that is part of rearing your child when it comes to having the conversation. You're mad, oh, I'm going to give you something to be mad about. No, let's help them problem solve. Then, like Dr. Jeter mentioned, they don't have the skill set to do it. But you cannot be afraid to ask for help. Don't be selfish and nobody got me help. Nobody showed me how to do that. Nobody talked to me. You should want better for your children. Resources are better now. We have more access now. And that's what makes the difference. But helping them to cope is having a conversation with them. It's simple as that.
Absolutely. And so what I deduce from, what your responses is, I think it's critical that we involve them, right? in these conversations. And to your point, you know, they're experiencing this pandemic just like we are, right?
Yes,
they've got cabin fever just like many of us have, right?
Yes.
And we've got to help them understand, you know, what's going on around us. And to your point, you know, yes, we've got to wear masks, but why do I need to wear a mask? Why is it important for me to wear a mask, right? What are we looking to avoid, right, by wearing masks, right? So I think that's important from what I hear, what you both have said, that we involve them in those conversations. Were you going to say something, Dr. Jeter?
I was just going to add that, and it's okay to say, okay, I'm not sure how to do it, but we're going to learn together, because you're going to be learning something too, and that's going to help you, because some of these coping skills, like Ms. Valley was saying, is that they don't have, you know, nobody ever showed me. And so it's hard to teach somebody something that you don't know.
Absolutely.
So let's learn this together. And that's going to give the parents some coping skills, and they need coping skills to be able to deal with that child's behavior.
Yeah.
And then the family grows stronger, because now they have all these tools that they can use for other situations that come up, like you said, everyday life.
Every day.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's key again to what you both mentioned is when the parent lacks the ability to problem solve, right? You think about it, they're on their jobs causing problems because they don't know how to work through
there you go.
The stresses of a job, right? They don't know how to work through conflict, right? They don't have those conflict resolution skills. And so they're on the job arguing with coworkers and cutting up and clowning and getting written up and, you know, on the borderline of getting fired. You know, come on, I work with them every day. I see it. I'm like, and I always say somebody's children, you know, that's always my phrase to myself, is somebody's child, you know, who didn't learn how to work together in a group, you know, and so, but again, I think it's important that parents drop that, I don't know what it is. It's something, I don't know if it's I'm assuming it's pride. Would you say maybe it's a bit of pride that maybe prevents some parents from acknowledging, as you all mentioned, that, hey, there's something going on. I may not be able to articulate what it is, but there's something wrong.
There's pride, it's fear, it's confusion, it's a whole bunch of different feelings that, and the own anxieties themselves of not wanting the diagnosis, not wanting to admit something is not right. And again, like we said last week, it's okay to say I'm not okay. And it's okay to say there's something going on with my child, but I'm going to find out what it is, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get them the help that they need. And it's a sign of strength, saying, okay, we're fighting together. You would do it if the child was diagnosed with cancer or anything else. Let's do the same thing for our mental health.
That's good. That's a good point. That's a very good point. So let me ask this question. So it's one of the questions that we received. So my child is exhibiting behaviors synonymous with some sort of mental illness. What should I do? What should I do, Mrs. Valley?
Exhibiting some behaviors. One of the things is, and Dr. Jeter mentioned this, the majority, I feel, go through their primary care physician. If that's all you know to do, is to contact them. Be prepared to explain what it is that you see that is happening as much as you can. You want to be able to talk about, assess for patterns. You know, they're not sleeping at night. My child is having nightmares. You know, they didn't start bedwetting till they saw, you know, Uncle Bobby in the casket at the funeral. It's related to that trauma. So the primary care physician, I would say, is the easiest that can open up that door, because most kids have to have physicals, you know, to go to school. That's where you go. They're feeling sad, nightmares, they're crying, you know, and they're watching one of their favorite cartoons. It's not a very sad scene. You know, their emotions are off. They're crying when they should be laughing when they should be crying. Be able to describe what is happening. Be able to describe how long it's been happening. Any pertinent events that have happened around them, because something can be attributed to death, like grief. the loss of a friend. We getting ready to do virtual. Kids are not able to go back to school. Assess what's going on and how they feel about it. Really kind of probe. Some kids are not, like you said, cabin fever. Even at the end of the day, they have to be able to sit in front of this screen. They like to play video games, and get on the social media sites, but work?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what is that gonna work? So definitely being able to just know what is going on with them. If you see something, then do it immediately. Don't just keep, when they're, like you said, they're getting in trouble at school, or, and finally, Dr. Jeter says something's going on, or they have a psychotic break, aggression, different things like that. Be able to notice, don't just write it off, and then tell someone.
Dr. Jeter.
I think everything that Ms. Valley has mentioned is exactly what I would say. One of the other things I know when I'm meeting with the family for the first time, or if they're bringing up a behavior or a symptom, I will ask them to do some homework. Write down, journal, write it down. How often you see it? How intense is it? And so that I can, excuse me. Thank you, sweetheart. So that I can see the pattern. But also, if you have, if you're going to go to your primary care physician, they may ask the same thing. But if you have that information, you'll be able to produce it. But again, don't be afraid to ask the child how they're feeling, what is going on with them, and then you can get some of that information. And then the time frame that this started from here, and it's gotten worse. Has it gotten better? In what situations has it gotten better? In what situations has it gotten worse? And then if the child is in school, ask the teacher, have you seen any of this behavior? How is he doing in class? The teacher might not call you every single time they see something, because it might be sporadic. But if you ask them what they're seeing, that's something else you can take to the doctor or family members or whoever may come in contact. Have you seen this, or watch out for this and let me know, so that I can, because that the current concern is there. So if you have all of that information, then when you're seeking seeking help, then that's going to help the doctor, the psychiatrist, therapist to be able to better diagnose and give a diagnosis quicker, because they've got that information.
Absolutely.
Sure. It's just like we mentioned last week, when we go to see a primary care physician, and we receive some physical diagnosis, right? Maybe the doctor communicates to us that we have hypertension, and it's difficult for us to accept that diagnosis. I want to ask the question to you both: how have you helped parents cope with a diagnosis? What strategies or methods, or what have you done just in your conversations with parents to help reassure them that you've made the right step, right? And things are going to get better, right? So how have you both helped parents to kind of relax that fear and accept that, hey, my child has this issue, but we're making strides to make things better? So we'll start with you, Dr. Jeter.
One of the things that you did when we first started is you went to the statistics. You were able to give some statistics about ADHD, or statistics about depression. And that may be one of the things that I started is ADHD is very common. Depression is common, but they also are treatable. And allowing them to understand that they are treatable, and that they're some of the most treatable diagnoses that, mental health diagnoses, and also complimenting the parent or supporting the parent, encouraging and saying, sometimes I will even say, I wish I had more parents like you who came in prepared. Or I wish you that you made this step because you're here today. You are doing what you need to do to address this problem. So, and making sure that they know they're a part of the team, and without them, that they are their child's advocate.
Absolutely.
Just supporting them, encouraging them, letting them know what they're already doing, and even asking them what have you already done to address this, and saying, okay, that was a great start. So we're going to add some things to what you're already doing. So just supporting what they've already done, because you're working with what you know, and so now we're gonna add some things that you didn't know were possible, and to what you have done, because you're your child's voice in a lot of situations. So that's where I start there, but also, just offering the comfort. And some parents will come and they're upset, and parents have been tearful, or throwing their hands up, but offering that opportunity for them to vent, for them to cry if they need to cry, and letting them know it's okay to have those emotions that you have, because your emotions are valid, your feelings are valid. But what are we going to do from moving from where they are now to where we need and want them to be? And that's for the child and for the parent.
That's good.
Yes, and I will definitely, what she said is absolutely true. Commending the parents on definitely acknowledging it on what they've already done, because they're the experts on their children. We're just here to assist and help. Add some more tools to what they're already doing. I also have worked for the same company for our crisis response here in Tennessee, and responded to Shelby County Schools. And I'll never forget, this young lady had, and she was suicidal. And she told the teacher that she was going to kill herself, walk out in traffic, different things like that. And so we were called in to do an assessment. And I'll never forget seeing two professionals. They were both, the parents were Shelby County sheriffs. And so I'll never forget sitting at the table with them, and because they had just told them they really needed to calm some, but they hadn't shared with them what was going on. And so just watching them break down in tears at the thought of their child being so sad that they wanted to take their life.
Wow.
Okay. I mean, we literally sat there for about 20 minutes doing what Dr. Jeter mentioned, acknowledging that I would be in tears hearing that, and so just helping normalize, unfortunately, that feeling and that experience for them. And then once they're knowing that, first assuring them that it's not their fault. A lot of times they go straight to them. It's my fault. What have I done? What didn't we do? What didn't we know to do? And so after you get with that and assuring them of that, okay, here's some things that we can do. And so the biggest part of that is assuring them that you have the support. You have so much support, and allowing others to come in to help you. That village thing is still key.
Absolutely.
It's still key.
Definitely takes a village, right?
Absolutely.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because we're not old, right? My sister and I.
We're not.
No, and I'm not saying you all are old either. I'm just speaking for Raquel and I.
Okay, Elder.
You both look wonderful. You both look wonderful. Your melanin is popping. But I said to say, Raquel and I, we grew up, and our next door neighbor, Miss Margaret, she was like another grandmother. I mean, she could
That's
get
right.
us. She could get us, and there wouldn't be any questions asked as to why she had to get us.
Yes.
It was just like that. And my grandmother could do the same with her children.
That's right.
Right? She could get them, and it wouldn't be any questions asked. I mean, you know, this was a true village, right? I mean, we're talking about go next door and ask Ms. Margaret if she got sugar, right? Or go ask your grandmama if she got, you know, an extra egg or something.
Right.
You know, we were always sharing and communicating and talking and dialoguing. It was a true sense of community. And so I know that is extremely important in the life of a child when they know that they've got truly an entire village who's looking after their welfare. And so I know how important that is because it was important to us. But you mentioned something about suicide, and I was looking at some stats the other day from the CDC, and it was showing that the rate of suicide attempts for Black adolescents has risen 73% from 1991 to 2017.
Yes, sir.
I mean, that is just almost unbearable to hear that the rate of suicide has risen amongst our Black adolescents 73% from 1991 to 2017. And obviously, I know there are various factors as to why that number has skyrocketed, but I do want to ask you both, what do you think are some of those factors that have played into that number? Now, again, I know that's based off of, you know, a limited amount of data, right? But still, you know, I think about just a few years ago, our oldest had a friend, they were in middle school, and she took her life as a result of bullying, right? She had been bullied so aggressively, and that's what sparked our anti-bullying campaign that we launched back in 2013. But she had taken her life because of bullying and maybe some other things. I think she had, you know, some sort of ailment that caused her, that stunted her growth. And so she had some issues, right? And so she was bullied. But again, I want to ask that question to you both. What do you think are some of those factors that has caused this number to skyrocket amongst Black adolescents? Dr. Jeter.
I think one of them that you mentioned, bullying, and that has, yes, sir. Just a minute, okay? Thank you. Bullying has, but bullying has changed. Well, has changed. You know, I know for Ms. Valley, my sister is on here too, and she's also a psychologist. But you know, bullying from when we were younger was just, you know, one-on-one. But or you're just gonna fight after school. Now it's, you know, you could come into school and have an altercation with somebody first period, and then by third period, it's you and the whole cheerleading squad. And then by fifth period, it's you, the cheerleading squad, and the wrestling team. And then, you know, by the end of the day, you've got the whole grade level. And then overnight, now you've got Facebook, Instagram, and every people you don't know from across the world inboxing you saying, go ahead and kill yourself. So, so we got cyberbullying, we've got all kinds of things that add to, that change the perspective of what bullying is. It was always wrong, but now it's just really intense. Then we've got the trauma. We've got trauma that kids are dealing with every day, whether it's a parent is out of the home, they're hearing gunshots at night, they're living with an abusive parent or family member. So we've got that. Then or the self-esteem, they're dealing with depression, whether it's through genetic factors or because of these other factors in their life. So we've got, and they're experiencing all of it. And so and then they don't feel like they have somewhere where they can go. They don't know that there's some place that they can go to talk about their feelings, or feel that, and sometimes they do, and people dismiss it because they think that they're too young to have those thoughts. But if we look at some of the young people who are taking their lives, you know, we're talking about 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds who are now taking their lives, and you know, you're finding them hanging themselves because of all the things that they're experiencing. one of the things that I have done over the last few years, I'm a part of with the district, is our Suicide Prevention Expo that we have every year to address this issue, and to educate families and staff members and students about suicide prevention, but also about where they can get help. So the numbers are growing, and we've got to address it. That's a pandemic too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've got to address it. Suicide Prevention Month is coming up. It's in September, and we've got to we have to take it seriously. We have to not dismiss when children come and talk to you about these feelings, because and then they feel it for various, if they have a breakup, or if they feel like they're outsiders because of girls can be something else. So if you have yes, but and I mean that, in the sense of bullying, you may get boys may fight, but girls are going to shun you, and they're going to get other girls in the school to shun you. So then you feel all alone, and then there's those feelings that they are isolated, and they have no friends, and they don't know how to deal with everything that comes with that. So those are just a few of the things contributing to it.
But I want to say something. Oh, go ahead, Sister Valerie.
One of the things, in addition to that, rather, you have the world changing, and of course we know the social media. So then you have those parents who don't have the skill to deal with the competing interests that are out there in the world. So the parenting of being able to problem solve, being able to even recognize, identify what is going on, more parents are working. So it's a whole lot of factors in there. But when it comes to the children, it is essential that as it changes, we pay more attention to that. I think that in addition to all of the things that Dr. Jeter talked about, we have to pay more attention. I remember reading, and this sticks with me, that a 9-year-old she was having a sibling. The parents were having a sibling, and, the 9-year-old continued to tell them that I don't want no sibling. I don't want no baby. I don't want a sibling. And from what it sounded like, they did not acknowledge that. Oh, well, she's just talking, she's spoiled and very smart little girl. Next thing they know, the baby came. You know how everybody wants to come and see the baby. They, and this is their admission that they did not properly bring her in or pay attention to her. A 9-year-old took her life, wrote a note. I told you all I did not want a baby brother. I mean, it's that has stuck with me like forever. And that was probably about 5 years ago that happened. So and Dr. Jeter mentioned about breakups with boyfriends and breakup with girlfriends. Oh, it is serious. It is not like we went through our little crying and our little in the room, Oh, it is way more serious than that. And so paying attention to those triggers, understanding, being conscious of, it is not like when we grew up. It is not the same.
And please stop telling children to just get over it.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely. That's a good one. That's a good one. Because I think more often than not, that's probably a phrase many of us have used. Probably too busy. More than we should have, right? Just get over it, get past it. And they don't have the skills to do so.
Right. You'll get past it. And then some of the things that we share with our parents are, because we kind of know some of the story. How was it for you to get over that? And then you get the big eyes popping, the headlights. Oh, I didn't mean it, but you don't know the damage that you're causing when you do that. You know, it's a different generations, it's different times. It is not okay to do that. And just leave it there. And so in the midst of everything that we can experience today that can cause trauma, we have to be attentive.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I want to add one more thing when it comes to bullying. Let's not forget that about bullying inside the house. Because a lot of people just assume that bullying just happens outside of the house, but siblings can bully. Parents, we know parents can bully. We call it abuse, but so we've got to acknowledge all of that. When they say so and so won't, push me in the closet, or they took my food, we've got to listen. Just like Ms. Valley was saying, we've got to listen and not just think that just because it's in the house that siblings aren't bullying siblings.
And we know those siblings that are a little sneakier than the others. You don't know how that child is when you're leaving them in the room with their siblings and the damage that they can cause. And that's trauma for this child, so you have to really, really, really pay attention. We're a lot of times, we give our kids credit for being, astute when it comes to knowledge, education, academia. However, we don't think about that part of it like Dr. Jeter was talking about. If, Billy is saying that when you all leave and go in the other room, that Barbara is hitting him upside the head, and just because you don't see any scars, and Billy is crying about it, and every time it's happening, and you are saying, man up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Billy's gonna grow stronger.
Right.
And he's gonna man up against more than just her.
Yes. And that's why you get those conversations when you talk to siblings, right? And and this can be once they become adults, and you may sit down and everybody's just having conversation, and you like, you experienced that that happened to you, because you like, how, when did that happen, or how did that happen? That's why, like you say, you have to be so important, because it's not just outside the home, it's also in the home. And then also, something that was brought to my attention a few years ago, even as family, when you're gathering, when you're having gatherings at your home, or you're going to other people's house or gatherings, children do things to children. It can be, even, sexually to another child, so children ducking off in corners, and you don't,
absolutely,
y'all having a good time, got the music going, you eating, and you ain't really paying attention. I learned that you got to pay attention to your children. I heard a story about two friends who were, just, they hang out with each other all the time, and the little boy did some unusual things to the other little boy. And when he got home, he told what happened, and they called the mom. Everybody was trying to figure out. Come to find out, dad was doing it to that child.
Absolutely.
So that child thought that was normal behavior.
Absolutely.
That child thought that was just what daddy said that's what you do. And I'm talking about in a black family.
Absolutely.
This wasn't because a lot of times we like to say, oh, it ain't us. That stuff don't happen with us. In the black community, we like to say that that don't happen with us, but it happens, and a lot of more times than we think it do. So we have to be aware of our children at all times. I mean, it'll blow your mind. It is crucial.
Absolutely.
Teaching. Okay, I'm sorry. Even
I was going to say, and I think what we're seeing now is a lot of those issues that we've reserved for other ethnicities. We're starting to see it more vividly now in our community. Not that it had just started, right? But I think we're starting to see it more and more now. So I think we've got to get past this. Well, that's a Caucasian issue, or it's an Asian issue, right? No, it can happen in our community, and it is happening in our community.
Right.
Yeah.
Very much so.
We always hear or at least I've heard, and I'm sure you all heard this as well, that children are resilient, right? You know, children, they can bounce back, they can recover quickly, they can get beyond it quickly. But that's not so in every case. So let's speak to that for just a moment. You know, yes, I know children are resilient. I know they're loving, right? They can forgive quickly. Many of them can until they reach a certain age, right? To where it's like, no, you cross me, forget it. You're off my list, right? You're no longer my friend, right? But let's speak to that, because yes, I understand children are resilient, right? But they still need guidance, right? And they need to understand those coping skills, right? So let's speak to that for just a brief moment about children and resiliency, Mrs. Valley.
Yeah, I think that you said it, that they're still children. They're still learning those formidable years. They're still needing to be taught how to express themselves, how to communicate what's going on with them. And I want to talk about it in terms of just being in the home in and of itself. There is so much confusion, especially in when we have our single parents home and we're talking about, oh, look at the little man, you know, he's the man of the house. But when the man comes in, then he's like, well, what's going on? You know, it is so, you see that so much. And that's when you get those young men and those young men that have not been able to express themselves. They are confused about it. They don't know whether you mama, you girlfriend, or whether, you know, or what their role is. It's a lot of confusion when you are doing that. So the resilience thing, let our children be children. Let them go through the phases and develop as they should. Yes, we have some children that are more resilient, but just like adults, I mean, I'm a therapist. I have a therapist. Please understand that. All of the coping skills that I have, that I know to use, I still need to process. I still need to talk. So understand that as a child, don't confuse them. If I can say anything about that, about the resilience, do not put them in an adult's place. And they're not prepared. And then you wait till they're 16, and then you're trying to put them in a child's place when they've been a young adult at 5. You know, that's confusion for them. And that is not okay. Every child is different. You know, I have 3 and raised in the same household, 3 different personalities, handles things 3 different ways. I mean, just totally different. You know, all are resilient in their own way, but they handle things differently. And so we have to learn, and you learn that early on. But a lot of times our parents tend to like one way a child handles things, and we will mock the other child, make them feel less than, totally destroy their self-esteem, especially our little boys. And then we want them to man up. You're going to get over it. You're going to get through it. You sister so-and-so grandson. We don't go out like that.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, that's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure and I'm kind of jumping, but it's a continuum. And then you want them to go off and have a healthy emotional relationship and get married and problem solve, and you done sent them with all that confusion so that they don't know how to handle any of those emotions, any of those feelings. And that's what you get. Wow. Then they come to us at the church for marriage counseling. I just wanted to throw that in there.
You know, but it's a cycle. It's a cycle. And they become unstable adults trying to manage and trying to navigate life and their relationships and connections, and they're confused. They're confused.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is kids are resilient if we acknowledge and support and put things around them, then they can make the adjustment. But they're like you said, Elder, they're not just going to bounce back if they don't have the skills. It's going to multiply, and it's going to continue to grow to be a bigger problem. Then we're going to have these confused, acting out adults. But we've got to embrace kids and put things around them, recognize, like Ms. Ballard, like, you know, what you're saying is that you've got individual kids with individual personalities. You can't discipline a child the same, you know, two children the same. You've got to know your child and know what they're going to need, and know how you have to address not just their behaviors if you're in a disciplined manner, but also their behaviors emotionally. And some may need some support. Some may have better coping skills that work for them, and some coping skills may be lacking. And you have to encourage them, and you have to teach them other ways to deal with it. And that's where getting the assistance, if you don't know, finding those other areas where you can get that to help that child that needs it. But kids can bounce back, but they're going to need the support to do it.
That's right. That is so true. You know, I think about, I've been working in management for a long time now, and one concept that I think I've been introduced to just about every place I've ever gone, or, you know, is that concept of emotional intelligence. And sometimes I think, you know, we're trying to teach adults, you know, the importance of being emotionally intelligent when they didn't learn this growing up. You know, they didn't have those skills, those coping skills, those conflict resolution skills, the ability to collaborate and work in groups. They don't have those skills, or they didn't have those skills rather growing up. And now we're trying to, you know, put it in them, right? We're trying to embed it in them now as working adults, functional working adults, you know, the importance of being emotionally intelligent. And sometimes it's like we're just spinning our wheels because they don't get it, because they can't grasp that concept, because they didn't have that support, you know, or there wasn't that interest growing up, you know, as children. So I think what you're all saying is so critically important, right? That we take the time to listen, not always listening to respond, right? But listening to understand. Absolutely. Because I think that's where we get it wrong sometimes. We listen just to have a response, right? And sometimes we don't respond well. But often we need to just stop, pause, and listen to understand what they're going through, what they're saying, and then take a moment to process what they've said, right? Because it could be something that may deal a blow to us, and we need to just take a step back and say, "Whoa, okay, give me a moment, right? You know, we'll let's table it for a moment. We'll come back and talk about it." Versus responding, well, you know, that's not how we do it, right? To what your point, Mrs. Valley, that's not how this family operates. That's right. You can't. No, that's just the wrong motive. That's the wrong path forward, right? We need to stop, pause, take a break, listen to understand, with the intent to understand versus with the intent to respond all the time. I want to ask this question as we work to bring this to a close. Two questions. First question is, how soon is too soon for therapy? How soon is too soon for therapy? Dr. Jeter.
You can do some forms of therapy with very young children. I have had 3 and 4 year olds in counseling in my office. Play therapy is very, very useful. So you can do therapy with very young children. Talk therapy is going to be a little bit older when they're able to communicate, but you can use drawings, you can use music, you can use various forms of media in therapy to assist even the youngest child. Because if you have a child that's 3, 4, 5 years old that's been sexually abused, they're going to be using some types of therapy to help that child to process so that they can move through that trauma. So but if you see behaviors starting at such a young age, then talk to the pediatrician, get some referrals, and find a good play therapist who can help that child, because they don't have the vocabulary, they don't have the language to be able to talk it out, but they can, things come out in their play. You may see an aggressive child, 2, 3, 4-year-old. You may see a child doing some things with some toys that you're like, wait a minute, that's real inappropriate. Where'd they get that from? So I wouldn't say that there's, that anything, toddlers can come in too.
Yes. Yes. And I just totally agree with that. We have 3-year-olds in families that we provide therapy for as well. I would say based on development of age and behaviorally, what's going on with them persistently. I mean, really, other than paying attention if it's persistent, if it goes against developmental age things, 3 years old. I mean, honestly, we had a 2-year-old turning 3. Sexually abused. I'm talking about all types of behaviors, that was their way of expressing what was going on with them. It's serious, y'all. It's serious.
Very good points. Very good points. Closing question. So we talked a lot about helping parents cope with their child's or children with their mental illness diagnosis, right? Helping them work through it. But how can a parent help their child cope with a mental illness diagnosis, right? So that they're not, walking around saying, well, I'm crazy, right? Or there's something wrong with me, or, why am I like this, right? How can a parent, right, reinforce, what therapists are saying or counselors or whatever the case might be? How can parents aid their children or child, right, in coping with a mental illness diagnosis? Mrs. Valley.
I'm going to say acceptance of what's going on with the child, not acceptance in, if anything is going on that they're doing as an outward act of the illness, but accepting of this is what is going on. This is what we've identified. How can I help? When the kid goes to therapy, you're in therapy too. You want to learn the skills because the therapist is always looking to share with you what they're working on with the child and how can you help. Be emotionally involved. Don't make the child feel as though they have a disease and, there's no help for them and they're all on their own. Well, only the doctor can help you, but I don't have anything to do with that. No, be vested in what is going on with your child, just like with anything else. Be invested in it. Learn, get psychoeducation. And I think I mentioned it the last time. The National Alliance for Mental Illness, NAMI, we're getting ready to do a virtual class. It's called Family to Family. And it is for those guardians or those caregivers of the person with the mental illness. It is a virtual class. There is a pre-screening that is done, but it's simple. Just asking questions, who you're caring for, what is that diagnosis, but they talk about it's 8-week class and it's psychoeducation. Learn about what's going on. You're learning about, terminologies, your problem solving, resources, all of those things. But the biggest thing is do not make a kid feel as though they're in it alone. Help them through it. Learn the skills yourself, and you will help them deal and come through that illness better, because they're going to grow up. Again, they're going to grow up. We all got daughters and sons. We need some mates, healthy, emotional mates when they grow up. So being involved is going to be key.
Dr. Jeter?
I would agree with that. first and foremost, you have to understand and deal with your own feelings about it, and process that, so that you're not putting that on the child when you're discussing that, or when they come to you. Truly understand and work through how, and acknowledge how you're feeling. And if you're having an issue with it, then talk to somebody about it. Talk to the child's therapist about it, saying, okay, I'm in my feelings about it. So that you can process that. But then if you feel that you are having difficulty talking to the child about it, then work with the therapist to work on ways, role play with the therapist about ways that you can talk to your child about what's going on, but get a good understanding of it. Don't wait, don't talk to grandmama, auntie, or whatever, who's just going to tell you get a crazy check and they're crazy and you can't do anything. That's what some families will tell you. But get a true understanding of what it is, what the treatment is, what the treatment possibilities are, what the emergency treatments are, so that you understand yourself. And then get back up from the therapist, from the pediatrician, whoever you need to go to get yourself some support and understanding, and then have those real conversations with their child about their symptoms and what they're experiencing, and help them know that they're supported, and that there's whether it's medication and therapy, whatever, that they're getting assistance for it, and that things can get better with the continued work on it. But you have to understand it yourself and have to get the assistance yourself.
It's important for parents to just use your resources. As a parent, once, you get a diagnosis or anything. I mean, I know I'm not a professional, but I've had to, speak with the psychologists and different things about different children and what we're seeing, because usually they kind of have a group of people that kind of help with the diagnosis. And so the number one thing is that there are support groups.
Every type of resource.
Yes, and once you start tapping into those resources, and like Dr. Gita said, you get that understanding, then you can, from a more educated perspective, can help your child. Because if you're ignorant to it, and when I say ignorant, I mean that not knowing about it and just have no idea, you have a misunderstanding. I've experienced that with many children who parents, thought that autism was like some mental retardation, and just didn't know, because it's not normal, or I wouldn't say normal, but they're not used to it in our community. And so it was just like, what are you talking about? My child not retarded. I'm like, I never said your child was retarded, So it's very important to use those. But once that parent got connected with other parents, she began to understand. And now that child is thriving, and that parent is too, because they utilize those resources.
Absolutely, and that's important. And again, that question is so critical, especially as children go to school, right? As I mentioned, I think in part one, when we were growing up, our resource class was CDC. And again, I didn't get the chance to research it. And maybe one of you know what that stands for. But growing up as children, children can be cruel. And we coined the phrase crazy, dumb children. CDC, crazy, dumb children. And that was so cruel. Now that I look back on it in hindsight, that was so cruel that we would use such terminology to describe children who were clearly having some mental difficulty, right? But because we didn't know what we were talking about, and again, children being cruel at times, we just called them crazy, dumb children, right? And of course, when you would say that to them, many of them became aggressive. Some of them, of course, walked away with hurt feelings, and the list goes on. And so I think it's very important, again, that we really help children cope with whatever their diagnosis is, even when they go to school, if they have to take medication, if they have to be in a different, class, resource class, that they understand you're not crazy, right? You're not illiterate, you're not stupid, there's nothing wrong with you. We're helping you, right? if they have to take medication, that they understand that this medicine is to help, maybe tame the issue, course correct them, whatever the case may be. I just think it's important that we really help children understand that, yes, you have this diagnosis, but you are not the diagnosis, right? Right. You are not
absolutely
that, right?
Absolutely.
You may have it. It
not
may
the
be because of
misconceptions that
genetics.
everybody has of that diagnosis too.
Yeah.
Whether
Absolutely.
it's family members or what they're showing
Absolutely.
you on TV or in the movies, you're not what that they're trying to display and make you
Absolutely.
think. And there's greater within you. You got everybody doesn't present the same way. So even though you may have this diagnosis, you're not going to end up or look like somebody that you see in the movie.
Absolutely.
Over exaggerate what the symptoms are.
Exactly.
So you've got to, and that's for the parents too. Parents need to understand that diagnosis does not necessarily mean what is in your head, like you said, what your experience was in school, and that's what you thought CDC was, or how you explained it, or the bullying that sometimes goes with
absolutely.
Some people don't understand that you put that out there, but we've got to help people understand that just because there's a multitude of symptoms, and you may have 3 of them, but you might not have these, and so you might not have the same presentation that somebody else does, but it doesn't mean that everybody can succeed and thrive if you get the assistance that you need.
Right. That's right. And that's our goal, here at the Pearline Hill Foundation, is to help families thrive, right? Through education, through empowerment, through information, through resources. Because again, as my sister alluded to, we're not therapists, we're not counselors, but we know some good ones, right? And we appreciate the 2 of you being on with us again for this important conversation. Black mental health matters. Again, we just want to thank each of you for joining us tonight. We want to thank our professionals, Dr. Jeter, Mrs. Valley, once again for lending your expertise, your wisdom, your knowledge, the information that you've garnered throughout your careers. Thank you so much for just spending some time with us and having this dialogue. Very critical, very imperative dialogue tonight. And we trust that someone heard something tonight that maybe that spoke to something that you were dealing with. We really trust and hope that you heard something tonight that is giving you a little bit more information to go, maybe giving you a little bit more confidence, right? To go and seek the help that you need for you and your child, or you as an individual, right? You and your family. I am going to post the NAMI information, the family to family. I will post that on our Facebook page, the Pearline Hill Foundation, because again, as Mrs. Valley mentioned, it is a free 8-session educational program for families or significant others and friends of people with mental health conditions. So I will post it on our page so that anyone who is interested in signing up for those classes are more than welcome to. So we will post that information. So thank you so much for sharing that. Raquel, any words from you as we prepare to close out?
I tell you, this part 2 was definitely a help for me. Definitely a help for me. If it didn't help nobody else, Pearline Hill Foundation, it helped the CEO today. I'm telling you, because as parents, we want the best for our children.
Absolutely.
When we bring children into this world, you want the best for them. And so this was really good information to help parents to get a good understanding. And, I just want to encourage the parents to know that, every child is a genius. And I don't mean, and that has nothing to do with academics. Absolutely. But every child is a genius. Albert Einstein said it himself. People think he was crazy. But at the end of the day, every child's a genius. If you judge a fish by his ability to climb a tree, he will forever think that he is stupid.
Yes.
But if you put that fish in the water, then he will shine, shine, shine. So, just be encouraged, parents. Every child is not the same. And so just be encouraged. Your child is a genius, and you just have to seek the Lord and seek help on how to raise and guide that child through this thing we call life. So I'm definitely helped my cell phone tonight. And thank you for everybody attending. I really, really appreciate. I don't know why every time I get on here, I have connectivity issues, but nevertheless, it was good.
Absolutely. And I'll end with this. I like what Dr. Judah said earlier in the conversation. It's no different if a child was diagnosed with some sort of cancer, right?
Absolutely.
We would run to St. Jude. We would run to any other hospital. We would do whatever we needed to do because what we want our child to live, right?
That's right.
The same with any mental health diagnosis, right? We want our children to live. We want our children to thrive, right? And that means we need to do whatever it takes, make the necessary adjustments, right? Do whatever it takes to ensure that our children can live and become emotionally intelligent and healthy adults. Again, thank you so much for joining the conversation tonight. Dr. Jeter, we appreciate you. Mrs. Valley, we appreciate you. Stephanie, we thank you for joining us on Zoom tonight. It's Dr. Jeter's sister, is that right?
And she's a psychologist.
I see the resemblance. Good to see you tonight as well. And again, thank each of you for joining us on Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, and YouTube. Again, have a wonderful night, and the conversation will continue. God bless.